Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
You know, Wendy, I was thinking all day about how much fun I had with our Patreon members last night.
It was a blast.
It was. It was a good time hanging out and talking about paranormal stories. And we even had people, so we had people from all over the country too.
We did, yeah, different time zones and everything.
Yeah, Chicago, New York, New Orleans, Indiana, areas all across the U.S. We love chatting about paranormal stories. We'd love to chat about paranormal stories with you guys too. If you guys have anything in particular, any questions or anything like that, place to go to is othersidepodcast.com/donate. If you're interested in hanging out with us, we do monthly hangouts and we ask questions and have a discussion. And it's really a fun little community.
Yeah. Share recipes.
Yeah, we share recipes. We drink wine and beer and have jokes, and it really. So I was thinking about that all day. Like, what a nice special experience it is, and I love to be able to share that stuff and hang out with our cool Patreon subscribers.
Me
so thank
too.
you very much.
Yes, thank you, friends.
So that was fun. So I was thinking about that when I woke up today, and then you know what the next thing I was thinking about, Wendy, was?
What's that?
Nirvana.
Oh, it was that kind of day, huh?
It was that kind of day. Well, I was trying to think about the first time I heard Nirvana and everything. So for this particular episode, guys, we've been doing some research, and February 20th is Kurt Cobain's birthday. Now, he would be, he was 27 in 1994, so born in 67, so Kurt Cobain would be 51 years old this year.
Wow, that's hard to fathom, isn't it?
Yeah, 51. And it's hard to think of him because Dave Grohl's a couple years younger. Because he still looks, he's beefed up a little bit, but he still looks good. He's still a rock star, you know. I think he looks better now. And I think Dave Grohl's the kind of guy who looks better with a beard, too. Like, he looks sharp with that beard.
It is a good look for him.
Yeah, it's a strong look. Because I've been watching old Nirvana videos, too. And,
nice. Oh, man.
And, you know, Chris...
Young Dave Grohl.
Right. And so Chris Novoselic, the bass player... So Nirvana was three guys. If you guys, so this is going to be, if you're like 20 or like your early 20s, this will probably be the episode where it sounds like we're talking about ancient history.
Oh, no. It was a while ago.
It was a while ago. And I was surprised too, how long ago it was that it's been. Kurt Cobain has been dead now for 24 years or almost 24 years in April. And so
that's so hard to believe.
Yeah, you're like, holy cow. And the thing is, they only have, two major label albums. You could always get their old album, like, Bleach, Nevermind, In Utero, and then they have the Unplugged album that everybody played just in 1995 to death. and so they were from Seattle, Washington. And the thing is that they made such a lasting impact with so few albums.
Yeah.
You know, like Jimi Hendrix had a bunch of albums. The Beatles had a bunch of, had a bunch of albums.
So many.
The Doors had a lot of albums. And because you think about these other people who were part of the 27 Club. Right. And you think about these bands. And so Nirvana had relatively few albums with which to create such an amazing impact.
Yeah.
And, okay, so when was the first time you heard Nirvana? When do you remember?
I think it was freshman year of high school.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think somebody... Somebody, I don't even remember who, but somebody played it, or maybe I heard it on the radio.
I can tell you the moment I first heard the song. Now, somebody said to me, it was my friend had said to me, we used to jam together on the bass, and he was really into Iron Maiden, and we used to play, and Rush, and we used to jam like Iron Maiden and Rush songs on the bass. And
see why you got along so well.
Yeah. Well, he really introduced me to Rush. Like, I always liked Rush, but he's the guy that got me, like, he's like way into it. I'm like, all right. Like, he'd make mixtapes for me and stuff.
Nice.
And so, anyway, he's like, hey, man, there's this song by a band called Nirvana. I don't know what it is, but you should hear this song. And I'm like, okay. And this is maybe like beginning of November, like 1991.
Okay.
And then I remember in the school bus on the way home, the DJ goes, oh, this is Nirvana with Smells Like Teen Spirit. And, immediately all I can think is they named a song after the deodorant. Like,
exactly.
What?
I remember that too. I remember thinking that when I heard that.
Now, guys, if you weren't around in the early 90s or let's say you weren't 14 in the early 90s like we were, then you may have missed this certain kind of deodorant called Teen Spirit. And
what a horrible name.
Right. It was so ridiculous. And the whole idea was that there was somebody in a different band had wrote as a joke on something like Kurt Cobain smells like Teen Spirit. As a joke that he smelled like this girly deodorant or whatever. And there was this, this riot girl, I think it may have been the girl from Bikini Kill or something. Writes that silly thing about Kurt Cobain. And so he used that as inspiration to write this song, Smells Like Teen Spirit, which became a monster hit. And I can remember hearing it on the radio and just thinking, this song's awesome.
That's cool.
I was blown away by how it sounded.
Yeah.
And it's funny because it didn't sound anything like what else was on the radio at the time. And I think that's why it made a difference.
Yeah.
Because, okay, so let's go back to 1991. You got, other like releases that year were like the second album from Skid Row, so like hair metal was still there. It was still big. People were still, it was still big hair in the suburbs of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I think there is still big hair in the suburbs of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, to tell you the truth.
I think so. Yeah, lots of it.
Lots of big hair, lots of glam metal, all that Sunset Strip, Motley Crue-ish kind of, stuff that it was pretty silly, guys dressing up with the makeup and the tights and stuff. And it was fun. I mean, it's fun music, fun party music and everything. But the new generation wanted something different, the Sunset Strip music. And so then Nirvana comes in with this song, which just like sonically and everything. Now, people say that Nirvana like stole the Pixies kind of sound, which was the soft, loud, soft, like the soft verse, super loud chorus, back to the soft verse. And the Pixies kind of had that same kind of guitar sound and everything. But I think the big difference was the Pixies didn't have Butch Vig as the producer for that first record.
That is a big one, indeed.
Yeah. And so Butch Vig is a drummer in a band called Garbage, but he also is a record producer, and he was based in Madison, Wisconsin. He had Smart Studios here in Madison. And he just produced, it was hard rock, yet at the same time it was poppy enough to be catchy, and it was slick, and like the drums pounded. I mean, I just think about the first time that the drums kick in on Smells Like Teen Spirit, and there's like these couple pickup notes that Dave Grohl does, like, and you're just like, yeah, like it sets you up to stand up and go wild.
Right. Just like they do in the video.
Yeah, right. Like all the kids do. And also that video too had a huge impact on people. Because number one, Kurt Cobain's not dressed up like
glam rocker,
like Poison or anything. Like he's not wearing a scarf. Not that there's anything wrong with scarves. Obviously, I love him. But
yes, you do.
He's just a dude. He looks like a junkie.
Yeah.
He looks like the character he eventually, he played. And the band, Chris Novoselic, is this 9-foot tall beast on the bass, just like looking around like, is that Bigfoot playing bass? Like they're from Washington State, right? That could be actually Bigfoot who plays bass on the Nirvana record.
The Sasquatch.
And then Dave Grohl with his boyish charm in the back, man, he just kills it. I mean, the drummer just kills it.
Oh gosh, I remember the first time I saw him in the video and I was like, what is that? Mm-hmm.
So it really did have a huge impact because it changed everything. And when you see behind the music on these old like 80s rockers and stuff, and I'm nothing against 80s rock. I love it.
I do too.
That's exactly what I was listening to before Nirvana hit. And the thing is, when you just heard the name Nirvana, what came into your head was like, I was picturing, how artists in the 60s were like uber spiritual and, like they were going on vision quests and stuff. Like when my friend said, this band's called Nirvana, I'm like, Nirvana? So are they are they like Krishnas or something? And so that's what I was thinking. Like, yeah. What are they like? What's that all about? And then you see them. They're just grungy dudes that are play like big rock songs and stuff. And their second like big major label release, In Utero, was actually like Kurt said that Nevermind, their original one, was Smells Like Teen Spirit on it, and that has Come As You Are and like what are the Molly? Not Molly, it's Polly. They have a song called Molly's Lips.
Oh my gosh.
Kiss, kiss Molly's lips. But it's a song, Polly wants a cracker.
Yes. And
so you could listen to it again and again, and you just like you'll know every single song in that album, like probably just from the radio over the past 25, 26 years. Yeah. But the thing is, Kurt Cobain thought it was too slick. He's like, it's too
polished,
produced,
huh?
Man. It was too much. Well, this kind of sets up part of his dichotomy. And part of the thing about Kurt Cobain was that even on In Bloom, he's the one who likes all those pretty songs, and he likes to sing along, and he likes to shoot his gun. Like the whole idea is that Kurt was writing a song about how much he hated the rednecks in Aberdeen, Washington, or whatever. He likes to shoot his gun, but he don't know what it means. And the idea is he sings along to these songs, but he's a redneck and he doesn't understand what the music's about. And that, but the thing is, and so he writes like that, but the idea is the pretty songs. And Kurt wrote pop rock songs basically. And so of course he wanted to be a rock star. Like, and you'd see him in these interviews, he's always complaining and stuff, but I mean, a lot of money, he had a pretty good life. And that's the thing. Like, if you really didn't want that stuff, then you just wouldn't go on tour. Then you wouldn't sign the major label record deal. You wouldn't have Butch Vig come in there and then turn your songs into like these glittery
pop hits.
Yeah, exactly. And so on the second album, he had Steve Albini from Electrical Audio in Chicago, and they went up to record at Pachyderm in Minnesota. And Steve Albini had a more stripped down sound. So In Utero doesn't have that pop sheen that I think Nevermind really set a new standard for the sound of rock recordings. But Nirvana would not have been the hit without that. Like if In Utero came out, that's my opinion. And you Kurt Cobain fans can come at me, bros. But no, I don't think that if In Utero came out first, they would not have had the career where Kurt basically became the last rock star. Like the last worshipped rock star.
Right.
Because think about 1991, it's the time where we still kind of have a mainstream. There's no YouTube where people right. I mean, on YouTube, people watch each other play video games. There was no, there was none of that. The video games were crap. We had like Super Mario Brothers. I mean, I guess 1991, the Super Nintendo was out, so things were.
Yeah, there was some cool stuff there.
We did have like Mario Kart first came out, so there was something. But it's just we think about today, and there's a niche for everything.
That's true.
Back then, there was not a niche for everything. It was just there was a mainstream, and then the people who like the weirdos who kind of lived outside it. And Kurt Cobain cultivated that king of the losers.
Yeah.
Kind of image. And here's the thing. When you think about how the cock rockers were when they it was like we're the coolest, the babes love me the most, that was the whole thing. Like I'm the sweetest guy, I'm gonna do stuff to you. Like all those songs were about how cool everybody was.
Yeah.
And Nirvana comes in. First of all, half their lyrics you're like, I don't even know what this song's about.
Right.
But then he writes a song like Lithium about how he feels mentally ill sometimes.
Yeah.
It was a complete 180 to what had come before. And I think that's what people were really looking for. And that's what set it off. Like, if he didn't have the pretty songs, he wouldn't have been worshipped.
Yeah, they wouldn't have heard of him.
Right. And it wouldn't have caught fire like it did. And man, did it catch fire. Ooh. But I think just about the people I knew who... Because first of all, you could play Smells Like Teen Spirit even if you kind of knew how to play the guitar.
Yeah, that definitely helps matters.
Right. So you get dan and that, it's 4 chords, and they're just straight up regular, nothing special chords, not Eddie Van Halen business or anything. And, well, people talk about the Ramones and how the Ramones influenced so many bands that, that some of their shows, like people are like, yeah, when the Ramones went to the UK to tour, it started like 10 different famous UK punk bands because they saw the Ramones do it. And they're like, if they can do it, we can do it.
Yeah, and having so few chords in your songs makes it so that almost anybody can do it.
Right. And I think Nirvana was that same kind of way. It was that kind of thing where it's like, I can I love Nirvana. I can play their songs.
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
And you don't have to be. There's no two-handed tapping.
Yeah, no shredding.
There's no special. Like, Kurt Cobain played like a guitar that he bought a guitar that he'd destroy on stage whenever he wanted. See, he bought cheap this Fender Mustangs, whatever. He bought the cheap guitars so that he could trash them. So he was a persona, and it was a sound, and it was an attitude of. He wants to be a serious artist. He wants to be, it was important to him, legitimacy. Like, he's not a sellout kind of guy. Like today, today's stars, because they need the money, especially in the music business, today's stars will be in any kind of commercial whatsoever, Or they'll have a thing where they'll, like Walmart will be the sole distributor of their album for 3 months or whatever before other people can buy it. That's the complete opposite to what a guy like that would do. So Kurt Cobain, the idea, and whether this is another thing that he developed as far as a part of his marketing, his personal brand or whatever, but integrity and caring about the music and not caring about the fame and, girls and things like that, that's part of his persona, that's part of his mystique, and that ideological purity is very attractive to people too, Because now that's someone you look up to.
Right.
And it's funny because you think about the other subgenres that start ascending in the early 90s. You take the grunge movement and the Riot Girls and stuff. And first of all, it also was music that wasn't based around just treating women as sex objects.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about glam rock. It was just all like, ooh, I got 2 girls coming to my room. Yeah. All that kind of thing. Like, Kurt Cobain did not look like the kind of guy who was playing music just to get girls.
Definitely not.
Right?
Didn't come across that way anyway.
Right. And you always see those interviews with guys. They're like, oh, why'd you pick up the guitar? He's like, well, to get girls.
Yep.
I've seen that a million times. Like, I started writing songs for the ladies.
Right.
And the idea that Kurt Cobain played it because he loved the music and he was looking for an escape and fun, something to get out of Aberdeen, Washington or whatever, without having to be, some kind of pig. I think it's an attractive thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Plus, he flirted with femininity and stuff, like the makeup he would wear, or like showing up to a press conference in a dress and stuff in different ways. Like, and the funny thing is like the glam rockers were wearing makeup and stuff all the time. Except they were so hypersexual. They were like hyper masculine.
Right.
While wearing lipstick and teasing their hair, they were hyper masculine. And, this guy could wear kind of a dress and it would mean something completely different.
That's true.
Than somebody else wearing. So anyway, we kind of want to get into why, Kurt Cobain was probably the last rock star in a way that his death affected millions of people. To their core too.
Oh my gosh, so much.
In a John Lennon kind of way, like when John Lennon died, and he was obviously in the biggest band of all time, or all those '60s rockers. And the thing is, the '60s rockers had such a bigger audience. They had 2 or 3 times the amount of people in the 1960s as were in Generation X, who were listening to Nirvana and stuff, and so that's an interesting thing that he's there right at the end of the mainstream, and his death turns him from a rock star into a rock legend. It takes him from being the flavor of the moment to being an immortal. Like we think of those like we talked about the 27 Club. And we have a whole episode about the 27 Club about Jim Morrison and Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin, and Kurt Cobain gets thrown in there too. So, there's a whole thing that, and we won't have to get into this too much because people have really talked about this to death. But did Courtney Love have Kurt Cobain killed? Because by 1994, their relationship was on the rocks. She witnessed him take an overdose of pills, of Rohypnol. I don't know why he wanted to give himself Rohypnol. But in Italy, and she said that was his first suicide attempts in Rome. And I remember those reports coming out. And remember, since we didn't have the internet, you couldn't just check an internet site.
Right, yeah.
There was you can check like Teeny Bop or whatever, or 17 magazine,
right?
.com.
Yeah.
You kind of had to wait for MTV News, and it was Kurt Loder and my girlfriend Tabitha Soren.
Oh goodness!
And they would tell you these stories, and it's like once a week you'd have the full thing, but every day they'd have like the MTV News Minutes. And again, if you're young, MTV, we'll beat this to death, but MTV played music videos at the time. It wasn't just a reality show channel. You mostly played music videos, and they have reality shows every once in a while. And so then you would be excited to see what was happening in the news. And I remember that when the thing came out that, Kurt Cobain had some kind of overdose or some pill thing happened to him in Rome. And this is just a few weeks before his death, and then he goes, checks himself into rehab, escapes from rehab 6 days later from Los Angeles, goes back to Seattle. And then a short time after that, he's found dead. And the death was, first of all, he's got an OD amount of heroin in his system. So he's overdosed on heroin, gunshot blast to the face, shotgun there with the shells. It's a shotgun, the shells, and then a suicide note. And so everybody's like, oh man, Kurt Cobain killed himself. And I remember when that came out, everybody was sitting there talking about it. People were like, oh man, do you hear Kurt Cobain killed himself? And like, oh no. And, people were really sad.
Yeah, it's terrible.
I think that when the news came out, I was like in play practice or something. One of the girls started crying.
Aww.
The actress types are very dramatic.
Right.
But this happened. And so, Nick Broomfield made a movie called Kurt and Courtney. There's a movie that came out called Soaked in Bleach that is also challenging the official story of the death of Kurt Cobain. Courtney Love's father. She had her estranged father says she did it.
Huh.
Like,
wow.
Yeah, he goes, he wrote a book and stuff like that, so he claims that Courtney Love did it. But the thing is, okay, now, let's say it's true that Courtney Love did, she was going to pay that Il Duce guy $50,000 to go up from Los Angeles. Il Duce, he was the lead singer of a band called The Mentors. And the Mentors are horrible. Band, if you listen to their music, their most popular song is called Donkey D-I-C. Anyway, and so it's the usual irreverent, supposed to be funny, but doesn't have the talent to back it up punk rock.
Okay.
But the thing is that this El Duce guy was just a famous crazy man, as the lead singers of punk bands often are. And the rumor was he'd do anything for money. He just would do anything for money.
Okay.
I'll take, if I make money, I'll do it. And so that's why was the idea that Courtney Love offered him $50,000 to off Kurt.
Oh man.
And his lawyer said that he had called him, he had called her shortly before he died, asking about doing a will for the first time.
That's interesting.
Right. Yeah. And Courtney said that the first time he tried to kill himself, she had said to him that she had considered cheating on him or something.
Oh boy.
And she said, it made him so upset. That's why he took all those Rohypnol or whatever. And then Nirvana was breaking up at the time too. Like Dave Grohl talks about it. And part of the reason Nirvana's breaking up is that Courtney realizes that Kurt's only getting a third of the songwriting royalties.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So Chris Novoselic, who plays maybe 6 notes in each Nirvana song, is going to make as much as her husband, Kurt Cobain, who wrote all these songs.
Yeah.
And then Dave Grohl is not even an original member of the band. He didn't join till, never mind. And so that's the whole thing, is that, was she trying to get the royalties? Was she trying, what was she trying to do? But here's something I thought about today, because I was reading some background on Courtney Love, and, she had a shrine in her house, before they were married. And they get married before he becomes, hugely famous. But she has a shrine in her house to wanting her husband to be the most popular rock star in the world.
Okay.
She does
that's a supportive wife.
Yeah. When people do their, not intentions, you say your intentions, or you say your,
setting
what's the Stuart Smalley thing?
The what?
I'm good enough. I'm smart enough.
Oh gosh, darn it. People like me.
Yeah, but what do they call
affirmations?
Affirmations. Her affirmation was about, how can my husband become the biggest rock star in the world? And so she's really centered on that. And she's got her own career. Hole is signed. And I think Hole is great. I've been going back and listening to some Courtney stuff. And I just forgot. I'm I always thought the Hole was a great band. Yeah. And I was like Courtney Love too. Everybody's like, oh, she's crazy. And she's, yeah. And
that's
I'm
the appeal, right?
Right. Yes. That is the appeal. But I thought she's also extremely talented, ambitious, and driven. And there's something to that as well.
Yeah.
But the thing, I was, reading this about her. She has this shrine that she wants Kurt to become incredibly famous, and she wants to be famous too. Like she's part of it. But she also like groomed him. Like she flew out to a concert. She got a guy to fly her out to a Nirvana concert so that she could try to seduce him, or like she's like, I'm going to be your girlfriend or whatever. And then they just were kind of inseparable. Couple of junkies sitting around doing heroin and talking about music and but then she also was known because she'd played in bands before. She was a singer of Faith No More for a little while.
What?
Back in the 80s. Yeah, like the thing is she was a rich kid, a trust fund kid. So she had a stipend. And she would kind of ingratiate herself into the scene by like she'd help people fund their albums, or she would show up to band practice and she'd bring the beer and the food and stuff like that.
Like a patron.
Like a patron, yeah. And that's kind of how she got to be into the music scene. She ingratiated herself. But also, she would find out who the next big thing in the town was and like kind of glom onto them or try to. She had a knack for picking who was going to be successful and then kind of become part of their story.
Huh.
And I mean, from Billy Corgan to, like she was in Faith No More. Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I was like, there's that whole, they had like a feud over who wrote the line, the killer in me is the killer in you. Like, Courtney's like, I wrote that line for your biggest hit, And it's just funny. She finds her way into all these kind of lives, all these other artists' lives and Kurt's life and there. So what if she did have him killed or something, but not to hurt him, not to get, maybe she saw that he was a junkie, $400 a day heroin habit. And I guess it's saying a junkie is is a mean thing. He was a heroin addict, straight up. And she had a small habit too, but she said that she spent like $20 a day on heroin and he spent $400 a day.
Oh my gosh.
This is the early 1990s. So that is,
that's a lot of heroin.
A lot of money. It's a lot of heroin, right. And so what if she saw Nirvana was falling apart? Kurt was basically killing himself. And she knows that once you go, you're no longer just a rock star. You become a legend. She's certified. But what if his death? And I'm not implying her I'm not implying that she had anything to do with his death, because I really don't know. And
of course not.
But what if, to me, like I just thought of like, well, what if she didn't want to hurt him? What not fighting him? She wanted to turn him into she wanted to turn him into John Lennon. She wanted to turn her husband into really the last great rock star, and his death solidified that.
Oh man. Oof.
Because you can't talk about Nirvana or Kurt Cobain without including the fact that he shot himself. Now that's part of the lore. You can talk about the Beatles songs. You can talk about John Lennon's Lost Weekend when he was divorced or separated from Yoko, and it doesn't have to relate to the fact that John Lennon was shot in 1981.
Yeah.
But like Kurt Cobain, like it comes with the territory now. So I think about that with Foo Fighters. Their first single was, This Is a Call. But like their second single might have been Big Me. But the third single, I'm going off here by memory here. The third single was like, I'll Stick Around. It's like, I'll stick around. The chorus is like, I don't owe you anything.
Yeah.
I don't owe you anything. When you're listening to it, all you can think of is Dave Grohl's now fronting a band.
Oh
and he's telling, is this a song for Kurt Cobain? I don't owe you anything. I'll stick around. I'm here.
Yeah.
Like you did this. And they weren't getting along by the end of by Kurt's death anyway. So those kind of things, like we even filter Dave Grohl's music through Kurt Cobain's suicide. Or at least we did up until, Dave Grohl became so huge and beloved.
Right.
And the drummer for Tenacious D. So those are the kind of the circumstances around his death. And that's just a little bit on Nirvana for the background. And I kind of wanted to get into that because I wanted to explain what kind of effect he had on people so that we understand why everybody's trying to talk to him in the afterlife.
Yeah.
That may be a thing with celebrities, but I was just surprised how many people said that they either saw the ghost of Kurt Cobain or they tried to contact Kurt Cobain after he had, like, I'm like, what? I just didn't realize that. Okay, so this is just, so somebody's putting ghost stories up on the Ghost Radar website. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
So they use the app Ghost Radar, and Ghost Radar is an app that says, like, well, if there's a ghost nearby, it'll say it, but it also has, right, stupid, but it also has like an EVP kind of thing in there.
Okay.
Right. So he writes in, this is 2013. He's like, I've always been a huge fan of Nirvana, specifically of Kurt. So when I downloaded this app, I put it right next to In Utero, and about 6 minutes later, I got the word shoot. Then 25 minutes later, I got the name Don. Don was Kurt's middle name, Kurt Donald Cobain. 8 minutes later, fan came up, and I'm a fan of Nirvana. Then a few seconds later, I got harmonic.
Sorry.
Finally, I got shoot. I got shoot about 15 minutes later. He's like, could it have been Kurt Cobain trying to talk to me? And obviously the story he writes in, it's all like the punctuation's off and the spelling's off and everything. So it's either a little kid or a guy who's who needs to go back to English class. But the thing is, this is obviously a young guy, and Kurt Cobain's been dead for 19 years when he sends this in. And so he's fascinated. He's like, okay, did I talk to Kurt Cobain on an EVP session? Because I put the thing right next to In Utero.
Okay.
And here's just a few different Kurt Cobain ghost stories we have. The weirdest one is probably, this story, and it ran in England, and it was just like a paragraph story, but it says, a 24-year-old bar manager from Essex, England, has finally dealt with the Kurt Cobain ghost that appeared on her compact laptop, the Register reports. Only now it won't boot up. The trouble began when Kurt manifested himself on her screen and demanded that she give us a kiss, love. So the thing is, first of all, give us a kiss, love is a very English thing to say. And so I doubt Kurt Cobain would show up. I mean, he was known to be, a jokester in a lot of times. And so him showing up for a computer and saying, give us a kiss, love. I don't know about that. The funny thing is the manifestation only occurred after turning her laptop off. So her laptop was off, and that's when Kurt showed up.
That's weird in and of itself. Whether it's Kurt or some whatever.
The funny thing is okay, so in any case, the sightings unnerved the owner, who says, I'm not a spiritual person. I had to do something. So she said she had your computer exorcised.
What?
Kurt no longer appears on the compact screen, and neither does anything else. The Register says that her machine has refused to run since the exorcism, and she blamed excess holy water.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, that's ridiculous right there.
Yep.
Yeah, what? That actually ran in a newspaper, and it was just one of those things, one of those side stories, how the Onion always has their one paragraph stories. And this is not an Onion; it was in a real newspaper.
Bizarre.
Okay. So, and here's people responding to this story though. Sick Angel. She's a blogger. She's like, I'm not alone anymore. Kurt's apparition came to me October last year, ever since I borrowed the CD from my friend, and I soon fell in love with Nirvana. Any of you knows what it's like to wake up shivering and then see his transparent figure staring at me from the frame of my bedroom door. I've been suicidal and depressed ever since, but I feel protected as well. I know how he feels. I would give anything to go back in time to save him and meet him personally. I wish he didn't kill himself the way he did. We all miss him. And then she puts the, you're right, the lyrics from so when Nirvana's Greatest Hits came out, 15 years ago, it was a while ago, they had a song called You Know You're Right, completed in the studio. It was never released. And so they completed it. And,
okay.
Yeah. That's the hey. Yeah. But the lyric is pain. I thought it was hey. It's pain is what he says. Pain. You know you're right. Anyway, I like that song. And other people are writing in my whole life I feel I have a sense to talk to spirits, and I used an online Ouija board last night. It told me that Kurt was in my closet and that I would be here at 2 a.m. I opened my closet as soon as I could when I got home that day, and I said hi. I got no response, but in my head I felt a sense he was there. Damn, I'd love to see Kurt. By the way, he didn't kill himself. I love you forever, Kurt. I want justice for Kurt. So,
okay.
Right, people are really like, you don't think, like, you just think like, yeah, Nirvana, pretty good band. And then other people are like, I love you, Kurt. I want justice for Kurt.
Yeah, they really feel connected.
Yeah, something's up. Okay, so then there's a guy on, so this comes out March 3rd, 2015. Okay, so somebody's having a conversation on Tinder.
Uh-oh.
And he's talking, right.
Oh, okay.
And so he's talking to somebody, and he keeps referring to his mom, so they think he's in England. But this person's having a discussion with this person they connected with on Tinder, and he's like, I love Nirvana and the Rolling Stones. And she's like, oh, nice. And he goes, I miss Kurt a lot. I once got to meet him. And she's like, what? Seriously? How old are you? He's like, I'm 16. How did you meet him? My mom knew some people who knew him. So you actually met him? Yes, I did. But he died in 1994. And he's like, you know those people who are able to get out of their body and then you're like nothing more than some kind of ghost? I'm able to do that, and don't say I'm crazy.
Whoa.
And she's still playing along though at the time. She's like, that's so cool. So you like got out of yourself and met him through time? He's like, yeah, something like that. He goes, it sounds really stupid, but he spells really RLLY. So I'm like, no, actually, that's what sounds stupid.
Right.
And she's like, that doesn't sound stupid at all. He's like, I swear I'm not lying. She goes, I wish I had that power. He goes, it's not really a power. It's more like a curse.
Oh,
she's like, but you managed to leave your body and go back in time and have your mom's friends organize for you to meet Kurt Cobain. That does not sound like a curse to me. And he goes, when I sleep, I'm able to stand next to myself, and then my mom comes in and tries to wake me up, but it won't work. But when someone touches my body, I'm not able to get back, and it's really scary.
Wow. It's, that voice makes it extra convincing, Mike.
Thank you. Oh, I should have done it in an English accent. When I sleep, I'm able to stay next to myself, and then my mom comes in and tries to wake me up.
There, thank you. That's perfect.
Blimey. I met Kurt Cobain through astral time travel. Whenever I do an English accent, I just sound like Dick Van Dyke. So I don't. But, you know, it really is a thing where all these people are saying the same. So you can just go on YouTube and people try to contact Kurt Cobain through the spirit box.
Oh,
now,
there's so many of those.
Yeah. Like this contacting
just
dead
trying
celebrities.
To dial up Kurt Cobain.
Yeah. Like, why would he want to talk to you? Number one. Like, why would he just like, he sees you're listening in utero and he's like, you know what? I'm going to say this guy shoot. Shoot. Through a spirit box. Like, get out of town. Kurt Cobain does not care that you're listening to In Utero. But people are trying to contact him. Here's one woman. She writes this on the Cafe Mom blog, which I read often. Great paranormal stories on Cafe Mom.
Oh.
No, I don't read it often. But
well, hey, you know, I'm not going to judge.
Google search.
Whatever
right, no, you do. I mean, you have to keep your mind open.
Right.
But, okay. So this is from Halloween 2011. And so this woman writes in and she goes to the psychic and a psychic medium, Karen Hollis, in readingsbykaren.com. That's your free plug, Karen Hollis, because you gave us some Kurt Cobain stories. But okay, she chooses Kurt Cobain and she said she's been haunted by his 1994 suicide for years. And she wants to talk to him. And she says that Karen is the real deal. You know, so she goes in and Kurt Cobain seems to show up right away. Like maybe he's standing next
Jackpot.
Maybe he's standing next to her like Patrick Swayze stands next to Whoopi Goldberg in Ghost. So I'm picturing Kurt Cobain standing next to Karen. And if I go to Karen's website, let's see if I can see her picture. Yep. Okay. So I see Karen. She's just a normal looking like soccer mom kind of lady.
Okay.
So picture like a dark room, maybe with a little candles or whatever. Picture a soccer mom sitting there, and Kurt Cobain standing next to her, and then talking to this woman, and then they start having a conversation.
Okay.
And Karen says that he regrets that Frances never got a chance to know him for who he was. Frances Bean is his and Courtney Love's daughter.
Uh-huh.
There were two sides to him. She never got to know the softer side. She's constructed a story in her mind about her father that's not accurate. She's felt limited knowing who she is because of not knowing who he was. He feels badly that she has to live with his legacy, the heaviness of what he did to himself.
Oh.
He felt in life that love was too much hard work. He felt things too deeply. He ran away from Frances emotionally. She's part of his soul. He loves her and he's with her. He's trying to keep her away from trouble. And we'll get to some more about Frances Bean getting in trouble. And so, is Frances getting married? Karen asked me. And prior to our session, Karen didn't even know that Kurt had a daughter. And then the lady who went to the psychic's like, yeah, Frances Bean just got engaged. And Karen says he really doesn't want her to get married. He doesn't think it's right for her. He doesn't think she's ready. But he says everybody's got to do their own thing. Now, this is coming from the man who wrote the rhyme married, buried, and then sang it 6 times in a row.
Yeah.
Right? Or, in Heart-Shaped Box, he's like, why don't you throw down your umbilical noose so I can climb right back? So obviously, he's probably just joking around, but obviously he's got some issues that he's expressing in his lyrics. But she says the session was so intense, and he had a couple more things he had to say, is that he doesn't want Frances to go through depression. His issues with Courtney Love are not yet resolved and won't be until she too passes over.
Oh, wow.
And they're able to have a conversation.
They're going to have a posthumous domestic?
Yeah, totally. He says that the idea that Courtney could have been in another relationship was unbearable, and that she was involved with a friend of his shortly before he died. He's still angry about people in the music business who stole money from him and later his estate. Frances is not his only child. He also fathered a son, possibly with a woman named Tiffany, but nobody knows about him. So, Kurt Cobain's secret child. Now we're talking.
Whoa, okay, here we go. Juicy.
Yeah, now we're cooking with gas. Gas. Besides looking after Frances, Kurt spends his time now helping obscure musicians, at least one of whom is poised to make it big with a song Kurt helped him write. So, Kurt, if you're helping out obscure musicians, maybe you can help us.
We have open minds. We're open.
We know a couple. He says he doesn't want to reincarnate anytime soon. It's too harsh here. Anyway, so this woman says that she talked to Kurt Cobain through a psychic. And also there was a psychic named Dr. Rob Cisna, and he spoke on a radio show into which he claimed to be speaking to the ghost of Kurt Cobain. This is in 2011 as well.
Okay.
And he does the same kind of thing where he talks about he regrets leaving his daughter, Frances Bean.
Aww.
So that seems to be a big thing.
That's sad.
And I'm not saying that these guys aren't real psychics, or that Karen's not the real deal, or Dr. Rob Cisna. But that seems like an easy thing to.
Pretty obvious thing.
Yeah. Like what is he upset about? Well, he's upset that he left his baby daughter, and
right.
Not that he was I guess he was a very loving father, but I don't know how much attention he could give her when he was strung out in heroin.
Yeah.
Right. Also, their nanny was a guy named Callie, was one of Courtney's old boyfriends. So that'd be kind of weird to have around the house.
Yeah. I'd say.
But the thing is that that just seems like an obvious thing that a psychic can say, like, okay, well, we can say it like this. I'd be interested if he can tell some kind of story that only the guy from the Melvins will know it's true, or something like that. That's
yeah.
And the Melvins will be in Madison, so we should try to have a spirit box session with Buzz from the Melvins, maybe, and
that'd be cool.
And Kurt Cobain, he might think that's funny because they're all very irreverent. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to be like, oh man, you're making fun of my friend. It's gonna be like, no man, he loved this joke. Okay. And then Courtney Love herself was quoted as saying, I'm not Kurt, and I have to live with his expletive and his ghost and his kid every day. And then the person's like, was she speaking philosophically, or she felt his presence as well? It's like, no, maybe she probably... Well, and here's the thing too, hundreds of eyewitnesses have said that they spotted Kurt Cobain all over the world, that he wanted to leave the famous life, and he didn't want to be a rock star anymore. So the idea is that he faked his own death.
And that is a way to escape it.
Yeah. He fakes his own death, becomes a legend. But then the thing is, like, do you think he want to leave his daughter behind? Like, so much so that he wouldn't get to have a relationship with his child. And I don't buy it. Of course I don't buy it.
That's a pretty huge sacrifice.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what some of the psychics have said. Now, also, there's a bench in Veretta Park near Seattle. And on April 8th, 1994, says Kurt Cobain took his own life. An employee discovered his body in the spare room above the garage. But in the time before his death, Kurt spent most of his days sitting on a bench just outside his house. And people say that they can feel his presence near the bench.
That's cool.
Yeah. And others said that they've seen him sitting there. Or they sit on the bench and they feel like somebody's breathing on them.
Wow.
Or touching them. Huh. So they think that Kurt's like, I don't know if he's paranormally breathing on them. I got some of that Kurt Cobain breath all over me. Like, oh, thanks, Kurt. There have been reports of his face appearing in the window of his former home. And the new owners say that during thunderstorms, they can hear whispers from Kurt himself. Now, if you go to the site of the bench in Veretta Park, Viretta, just in case you're heading to the Washington area soon, you should probably enjoy some recreational marijuana and sit on the bench or whatever. It's all legal. If you visit the bench, you'll find a bench filled with flowers and cards and writings from fans who miss his inspirational talents. The city parks department must replace the boards on the bench every so often due to the graffiti left by fans. One guy says he has the original boards that Kurt himself sat on before his suicide. Ooh. And he says that after collecting these boards and placing them on his property, he began encountering strange things. He felt a chilling breeze shoot right past him, as if someone had run by him. He's heard odd noises and felt a presence, and he believes that Kurt's spirit might be still attached to the boards.
Okay.
So that's another, Kurt Cobain ghost story. And really, Kurt Cobain does have that kind of, first of all, he died young. He died in a suicide, and suicides always spawn ghost stories.
True.
And something else I thought was interesting was that I was looking for, Kurt Cobain stuff, doing research for this article. Loren Coleman wrote a book called The Copycat Effect. Loren Coleman is the guy that came up with the word suicide cluster, I think, with the idea that one person kills himself and then other people start. Like, it gives them the idea that suicide's a good idea. And so that's what they always worry when somebody famous kills themselves, that other people will do it. I mean, the character Arseface from Preacher, and he's not in the TV show, because it's not set in the 1990s. In the TV show, that character shoots himself in the face for a different reason. But in the comic, it's because him and his friend worshipped Kurt Cobain, and they were so upset by his death that they thought that shooting themselves was the only way out.
Awful.
And then it doesn't work for him, and then he's got a big hole in his face, which is why the name Arseface. It's all very 90s edgy comic kind of thing, and now they're make a TV show of it. But TV show's pretty good.
Oh, that's cool.
The Preacher, I'd recommend Preacher. It's fun. Dark, so you got to be in the mood for dark and dark humor. But if you're listening to this podcast, I have a feeling you might be. Oh, no. So, but he said that in Australia, Canada, and France, suicides related to Cobain's death went up. So that there are perhaps 70 copycat suicides directly linked to Cobain, but not in the United States. Because some people say that they handled it really well, like with all the suicide prevention hotline stuff and everything that came out after Kurt Cobain was announced that he killed himself. And it was not so in other countries. And, and the thing is, like, there was just a story that came out less than 2 weeks ago, maybe just last week, that suicides rose 12% in the period following Robin Williams' death.
Wow, that's a lot.
So that is like a dangerous idea virus. That's the thing. When I worked at the TV station, we would not report a suicide.
Oh.
So in like the town of Tomah, Wisconsin, so Tomah is a small community, there were like 3, within a month or 6 weeks or something like that, there were 3 like middle school suicides. 3 in like a town of like 20,000 people.
Sad.
And, and that you just don't report it on the news, even though I would be like, that's big news, because there's something going on. Like send in like a team of psychiatrists in there immediately.
Yeah.
Or, take away the people's forks or whatever you got to do. But people are killing themselves. I just like kind of a sad thing. And I was just surprised that, the when the Robin Williams thing came out. Anyway, I just wanted to mention Loren Coleman because we also found something on our former a guest of ours on the show.
Yeah, that's always fun.
About Kurt Cobain.
Connection.
You're like, oh, look at that. People have written like fan fiction about the ghost of Kurt Cobain. Speaking of suicide, there was a play called Nevermind, a fictional comedy about a manic depressive NME journalist. NME is an English music magazine, who is visited by the ghost of Kurt Cobain when his life reaches a series of new lows. And so Kurt has a discussion with him about killing himself. And that's in the play. It premiered in London in 2009. Then 2016, Toronto author Lynn Crosby writes "Where Did You Sleep Last Night?", which was one of the covers that they performed on Nirvana Unplugged live in New York, is the name of that. And so there's the name of her book, "Where Did You Sleep Last Night?" And so what happens is, let me read you the cover.
Okay.
Does true love have supernatural power? Where Did You Sleep Last Night is a love story about a teenage girl who embarks on a relationship with Kurt Cobain. Evelyn Gray is a sad and lonely 16-year-old from Carnation, Washington, who is terrorized by her classmates at school. She spends most of her time in her room reading, writing letters to dead people, listening to old records, and talking to the poster of Kurt Cobain above her bed. Her mother is an alcoholic grunge relic from Seattle whose recollections, books, and music help ignite Evelyn's love for Cobain, a love so painfully strong that it summons the deceased singer to her side. When Evelyn is taken to the hospital after an overdose, she awakens to find Cobain, who has little or no memory of his former life, convalescing in the bed beside her.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Would you go to see that?
Yeah.
Sounds pretty interesting, I gotta say.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's Where Did You Sleep Last Night? And it looks interesting. And let's see. So it's got a bunch of 5-star reviews and a couple 1-star reviews on Amazon. But they're just fascinated with him,
Yeah.
Even InfoWars, even Alex Jones is fascinated with him.
Huh.
Because they have this whole thing. First of all, the idea is Kurt Cobain had been murdered by the CIA because he was a Bill Clinton supporter. And George H.W. Bush, his job before being vice president was the head of the CIA. So that's
an interesting one I had heard.
That's one of the silly conspiracies, because also it'd be 2 years after the election, like, what's Kurt going to do?
Right.
Like, they're going to make Kurt Cobain, like, stump for Bob Dole. Yeah, Bob Dole's he's not going to be like a Bob Dole fan.
No.
But there's also the idea that Kurt was into occult stuff because he was really into this beat writer named William S. Burroughs. Now, William S. Burroughs wrote Naked Lunch. He just wrote a lot. He's really into weird stuff, really into occult stuff. Like one of those guys who hung out with like the Beat Poets, Jack Kerouac, all those guys had, there's a little bit of occultism in there.
Yeah.
And so Kurt Cobain's really into William S. Burroughs. And there's this whole thing on prisonplanet.com, which is another one of Alex Jones' InfoWars sites. And there's this whole story about how this guy's trying to connect Kurt Cobain to William S. Burroughs, and like they performed a strange sex magic occult.
What?
Yeah, like ritual. Burroughs was famous for accidentally shooting his wife at a party in Mexico in 1951. Courtney Love plays that wife in a movie with Kiefer Sutherland as William S. Burroughs, and Ron Livingston. Speaking of the,
all right.
We love Ron Livingston from Office Space, and Norman Reedus, who's Daryl on The Walking Dead. So I'm gonna have to see that Beat movie because it sounds like it'd be really interesting. But the idea is that he was into he wanted to be part of Burroughs' like secret satanic occult society, and so he met him 6 months before his death. They performed some kind of sex ritual, and then he died because he was experimenting with too much occult stuff. Basically, is what this guy says. And I still prefer the idea that Courtney Love did it to make Kurt a living legend. Not a non-living legend, I should say. Okay, and then speaking of Satanism, Frances Bean has been hanging around with like Anton LaVey's daughter. So, and talking about her marriage. There's something weird going on where her estranged husband, so they're already estranged. Like Frances Bean's like, 25 or 26 years old. And she's already estranged from her husband. And he was recently kidnapped.
What?
Yeah. But Yeah, by a guy named Sam Lufty.
Oh.
And like Sam Lufty was one of his former manager.
Huh.
And he was once accused of drugging and emotionally abusing Britney Spears during her public meltdown.
Wow.
Remember when she took the golf club like to the paparazzi car and shaved her head and stuff like that?
Sad.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he's a really nice guy.
Yeah. So this Sam Lufty guy's but the thing is,
outstanding citizen.
Tom Grant is the private investigator who worked for Courtney Love when Kurt Cobain ran away from rehab. Courtney Love hired a private investigator to find him.
Okay.
She didn't realize he was just at home. Like she didn't have like Find My Friends in her iPhone, and she could see Kurt's iPhone at the ranch.
Nice.
She, she's like, oh no, and so she hires him. And then Tom Grant, since his death, has said that it was a murder. Like he's a conspiracy theorist, totally about Kurt Cobain's death.
Oh wow.
And he's interviewed saying that something's up, that they kidnapped Frances Bean's soon-to-be ex-husband.
Huh.
But she's also saying that she finds Satanists fascinating. So who knows if Frances Bean... She's a model now, so she's doing all right. Even with Courtney Love as a mom, who accidentally admitted to doing heroin like in the beginning of her pregnancy.
Oh, dear.
But the thing with Courtney Love, though, you never know how many of those things are...
for attention or...
Yeah. To shock people.
Right.
To get a rise. But Frances is fine. There was even a movie that came out recently, speaking of Courtney Love, that she had asked this director to take a whole bunch of take some of their old home movies, do some new interviews, take Kurt's like journals and put stuff together. And the movie's called Montage of Heck. And in October of 2015, they made a haunted house with like Kurt's nightmares as the haunted house.
Wow.
Like that was instead of like having like a monster or a ghost.
That sounds very sad. I don't think
they had like...
That does not sound fun.
Like some of his nightmares were like, you enter a room and someone playing Courtney Love is in a closet and she's yelling at Kurt, like a guy playing Kurt who's on a toilet, like, you're a junkie.
No.
You're just a junkie. You're no good. There's a guy dressed like El Duce, that guy from The Mentors, who's, he says like leering things to the girls who walk by, like, I'm going to get you, girl.
That is it's really sad, but think about the creativity for somebody to come up with something like that and to sit there and try to imagine of all the worst things that he went through. Yeah, that's dark.
The thing is, in the movie, and they talk about this. So one thing Kurt did was like he tries to have sex with like a special needs girl or something, and he ends up being like super ashamed about it and stuff, and it doesn't work. But they have like her and that was like his most, like he said, like it was his worst moment where he did something he didn't want to, or he was ashamed of it because he was going to be like just using this girl. One of the guys from the Melvins said that the story is crap. He's like, it's not even a real story. He's like, I would have heard about that story if it was real, because they went to high school together. So he's like, I would have known about that story. He's like, it's not a real thing.
Yeah.
But they have like that scene play out where he's like putting the moves on her on the bed and stuff like that in the room. And so like they put this whole thing together to make a Kurt Cobain themed haunted house. And like the final nightmare is that it's supposed to be Frances Bean as a rapper.
And like a little sense of humor, not all dark.
And her DJ has like ICP makeup on.
Oh my god.
So that she turns into like a white trash, like his nightmare from Aberdeen, Washington. So so people are just fascinated. Like Kurt Cobain, it has as much of his music is powerful to people. He seems to have just as much effect on them in death as he had in life.
Wow, definitely, very impactful.
Anyway. Love his music, and what part of the reason that it was so popular is that it was fun to play, and you could just pick up a guitar and play it. So we're gonna do that right now with one of my absolute favorite Nirvana songs. And the story behind this song is that he was playing it for Butch Vig on this old guitar. He wanted the full band to do it, like a big rock song. And Butch is like, "No, you should do it like this." just have it be a stripped down acoustic song with some strings and stuff, and it turns into something that sounds like nothing else on the album, and I love it. And so here's Sunspot doing Nirvana's Something in the Way.
Underneath the bridge, the top has sprung a leak, and the animals I've trapped have all become my pets, and I'm living off of grass and the drippings from the ceiling. But it's okay to eat fish, 'cause they don't have any feelings. Something in the way. Something in the way. Yeah. Something in the way. Underneath the bridge, the top has sprung a leak, and the animals I've trapped have all become my pets, and I'm living off of grass and the drippings from the ceiling. It's okay to eat fish, 'cause they don't have any feelings. Something in the way. Something in the way. Yeah. Something in the way.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
You know when at the beginning of the episode we were talking about our Patreon hangout last night?
Yeah.
And we would be remiss if we did not thank our wonderful Patreon community for all the stuff they do for us, and they get the questions and the conversations and the topic ideas and everything. It really means a lot to us. And
they're very interesting people.
Yes, which is part of the fun. They get to know people.
Yeah.
And then find out their stories.
Right.
Is what I love. And so Dr. Ned is at the Patreon level where he gets a shout out every single week. So Dr. Ned, thank you very much for your support.
Ned.
It means a lot to us.
Yes.
And all of our Patreons, we love you. And if you guys are interested in becoming part of the See You on the Other Side Patreon community, there's a link in your emails that you get. So if you sign up for the email list at othersidepodcast.com, you're going to get some cool stories from Wendy and I, personal stuff. But then you also get a link to the Patreon, but you can go right now if you can't wait And where can they go?
Othersidepodcast.com/donate.
All right. We'll see you guys on the other side.
Ciao.
They named a song after the deodorant?